Hey guys, I'm Jackie Brubaker. I'm an author, a motivational and career coach, and host of That Girl the Podcast. Each week, I bring on a leader in their field to talk about how to stop making excuses and how you can start living your lifelong dream. That Girl the Podcast is based on That Girl the Novel, which is on Amazon to download or buy the paperback of. You can also follow us on Instagram at That Girl the Podcast and our Patreon page. All right, let's do it. Yay! Let's do the podcast. Welcome, Sara, Totten, right?
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited.
I know, I'm excited to have you back too. Oh my gosh, our episode on ghosting went viral.
I can't believe that's crazy.
It went nuts and it was out for a month and then it just suddenly started picking up speed overnight. I had over 12,000 downloads and counting.
That's insane. I think it's just one of those subjects, though, that just every single person can relate to, whether it's, at the moment or previously. Like, I think we've all got a story or we know someone that's got a story. It's just really something that everyone can relate to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And today we are going to talk about the new phenomenon called breadcrumbing. For those of you who have not heard, we're going to explain it. We're going to talk about how it happens and how to avoid it. And also things that go with breadcrumbing that are happening in the dating world that are connected to it. And Sara, I'm just going to say it over and over again because my reaction is to be like, Sara, but that's not your name.
I like the way you say it though.
Oh, thank you. Yes. All right. I'm going to really let you lead this because you are an expert in this, in the field of dating and the realm of dating. And I learn everything. Every time I talk to you, I learn so much more. So.
Oh, wow. You're welcome.
So breadcrumbing, why don't you give your definition? I'll give mine. And I'm sure it's the same, but.
Yeah. So basically when you kind of approached me to do this episode, I was aware of kind of what it was, but not necessarily by that term. And I think we actually briefly touched on it in our last episode about ghosting, where it's kind of that situation where you've maybe been on a date or a couple of dates with somebody and they might have ghosted you or they're maybe not texting you as much. But what they'll do is, they'll leave you hanging and then they'll text you, or they'll maybe look at a story on your Instagram, or they'll react to a story or like a picture. And they're just leaving this little trail of breadcrumbs that make you think that maybe they're still interested and just kind of keeping you where they want you. So they're basically, you're available for when they want to have you. That's kind of my understanding of it.
Same. That is exactly what it is. And it is so confusing to everyone out there who is dating and dealing with exes who do this. Like a lot of exes do this. They're just like, I'm going to watch all your stories and like your pictures and send a fire emoji. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, I am so confused.
Yeah.
So my understanding of why people do this is basically, well, there's a few different parts to it, which we'll get into, but basically they just like that hit of attention. What do you think?
Absolutely. And you know what, though? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I've done it, on purpose. But, the one thing that I've sometimes done when I have been dating is, on WhatsApp, you can archive people.
Oh,
so you can
explain
archive
that for people who don't. Okay.
So on WhatsApp, you can obviously have when you open the app itself, you have your list of text messages and conversations that you have with your friends, family, whoever. But what you can do is if you maybe don't want to see a certain conversation or whatever, you can actually archive that to a separate folder. So what I've done in the past when I was dating is that, there might be somebody who you're not really talking to, or you don't really plan on going on another date with for a while, or, potentially ever, but you never know whether or not you might want to hit them up one night, or, whether or not you've been, out with friends drinking and maybe just looking to meet up with somebody. Right. You go into the archive folder and you've kind of got your list of whoever you want. So I am guilty of it myself. It's sending like a random message here and there. It's kind of probably like a booty call kind of text as well that you get kind of, in the middle of the night or late at night.
Like so 10 I think p.m., like the perfect time to send that text where it's not too late, but it's not too early. It's just right.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, they're most likely to be awake, right? So it's kind of like it's a perfect time to do it. But I think, like you said, with kind of like bringing Instagram into it and them kind of reacting to stories and sending emojis and whatever, it's so easy to do it now because there's so many different platforms in which you can do it on. So it doesn't even have to be a text here and there. It can be, if you watch who watches your stories, it can be looking through and seeing if that person who you're wanting to watch them has, if they've liked a picture, like I said. There's so many different instances in which you can potentially think, right, what's this person actually doing?
And so many people are too afraid to even send a text.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're like in a weird spot in your life. Like you have put some boundaries up, but they're like, well, I can't text her, but I will watch her stories every day and maybe leave a fire emoji. I just love the fire emoji. That's my favorite one.
Yeah, it's my favorite too.
It just says so much. But I have someone who does this, and this was fascinating. So we were like trying to date, whatever, and then it just didn't work out. But he just continued to watch all of my stories. And for a while, I was like, oh, he must still care. And, even if he does, like, this is obviously not someone I want to be with because you're just watching my stories like a creeper and not talking to me or trying to see me, which is also a huge part of breadcrumbing is they won't they might try to set up plans, but then they always cancel. There's always an excuse, and it's a pretty legit excuse. And you're like, well, okay. I mean, yeah, that sounds right. But then they always cancel because again, it's like they only have so much commitment. Now, with some people who you have put boundaries up and maybe they're like, yeah, I can't text her. Like that's off limits. Mm-hmm. Like this is the closest they can get to you, which is still such a mind fuck. Like just, oh my God, just grow up, be healthy.
And it is, it's like you said, it is just kind of that hit of self-esteem that they might need, just to if they, like you said, if they set up plans but don't ever have, they don't intend on meeting up with you at all, it's just the fact that you've accepted to see them and wanted to meet up with them as well. That's just like they're validating how they feel about themselves, right? So it goes quite deep, I think. And if you think about it like that, it's an interesting one.
I think so too. And I think that a lot of people could just automatically be like, oh, well, they're a narcissist. And perhaps they are, but most likely they have some real narcissistic traits because this is a narcissistic thing to do, is to try to get attention from a source and get that fuel without really giving anything back, barely anything back. And it just leaves you confused and a lot more vulnerable to, fall for that or fall for more if they decide to actually get the courage to, talk to you more.
Absolutely. I think as well, like obviously when it comes to texting or emailing or however they decide to reach out, that is them making an active effort. But I think when you look at Instagram to kind of turn it on its head, is I think sometimes, and I kind of feel like I can say this because I'm a woman myself, is that we are just, I personally overthink so much. I overthink about every single thing. And I think it's kind of like a trait that a lot of women, especially when it comes to dating and relationships, also have. So I think sometimes we can read into things that actually don't mean anything. So with Instagram, let's think about it from this point that, how many times a day are you just sat on your phone, just mindlessly scrolling? You're looking at stories. You're not even paying attention to whose story they belong to. You're not really thinking much. You're maybe like flicking through pictures, liking the ones that you like the look of, but you don't even know who they belong to. Yes. So I think you also have to think as well to kind of, in a way back up the men is that, they probably aren't thinking anywhere near as much about it as we are. So they might send that fire emoji or they might look at your story and we're thinking, oh God, what does this mean? Does this mean that they like me? Are they wanting to see what I'm doing? But let's face it, like I said, guys don't think that much about stuff like this. So it's probably just the case that they, are still following you because they just haven't unfollowed you. They're looking at your stories because it was the one that was after the one that they were looking at before.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like
so huge.
It doesn't actually have to mean anything. But then, there are certain circumstances where, the person that is looking at your stories who you've maybe dated or been in a relationship with or had a few dates with is doing it from a good place and just, wanting to see what you're up to or, I personally have kind of, been on dates with people and sort of dated certain people and you still wish them well and you kind of want to see what they're doing and what they're up to. So I think it could also come from a a nice place and not necessarily this sort of narcissistic, nasty place that we assume it's potentially coming from.
Absolutely. I think there is a real divide of confusion between, does this person have feelings for me? Does this person just have goodwill feelings towards me? Or is this person just a bad person?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It is so black and white between the two spectrums, especially on social media. I feel like it's either like, nope, he left you. That's it. He's a dick. Leave him alone. And like, you can never be nice to them ever again or talk to them ever again. Like, that's it. Or you're like, oh no, we're going to get back together. And you live in this weird bubble of like a dream world. And it's very, what would you say are like valid signs that someone is trying to like reach out to you? Let's say, hypothetical, you broke up, 6 months ago, and maybe you dated for like 6 months. I don't know. And now there's some activity happening. Maybe there wasn't. Now there's some activity. How would you tell people that it's real versus just your story was the next in line and he watched your story?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? And I think we kind of again touched on this in our last episode, is that I personally am not a game player. I hate playing games. I'm 30 years old. I don't have time for it. I'm just not, if I like you, I'll tell you. If I don't, I'll tell you that as well. Yeah. So I think from my standpoint, if somebody likes you and they want to see you, you will know. I actually did a reel on this and kind of, it's very much like, oh, how do I know if they like me? How do I know if he likes me? They'll text you, they'll call you, they'll want to see you, and they'll follow up with those plans. They'll follow through with them. They'll want you to see their friends. They'll take you to events. You won't even have to question it. So I think when they're kind of like, leaving these little seeds and these breadcrumbs around, and you're kind of constantly there wondering, honestly, if that was me, I would assume they're just fucking around. Yeah. Because if they wanted to see me and they liked me genuinely, they would let me know.
I so agree with that. And that is very hard when you are seeing the ex that you love still give you these little breadcrumbs and it's just messing with your head. But absolutely, like, men are so simple. If they want something, they go get it, whether it's a car or a job or a girl or a guy. They go get him. And like, that's just, they're built that way. Even if they're like, and I can hear like women saying this, they're like, no, he's like an introverted. He's like way more feminine. He's like very passive. Even they will go get you. They will. Maybe they won't be as aggressive, but they will absolutely be like, hey, let's hang out. Hey, let's do something. Like, they will make the moves. There's this awful reality show that I just love to watch. It's called Marrying Millions. And
that's right up my street.
Please watch it. If you can get it there, Marrying Millions. I think it's like Lifetime. Our channel is Lifetime. Anyway, it's all about these couples where one is super rich and one is super not. And it's supposedly real. We'll see. So this one couple she's a beauty mogul. Like, she created this huge beauty, I forget what she created, but it's huge. It's like something we would all be like, oh, wow. And she's, I think, late 40s and still cute, but like, and she is with this literal skater boy with like really long hair, really long beard, literally hangs out with other skater boys who are also in their 30s. I think he's only like 30. Anyway, he's the most passive, most feminine dude, kind of, like just passive, right? Like, low key passive. Anyway, she proposes to him on this last episode. She has this really cool ring made. I was like, that was actually awesome. Proposes to him in this really cute way. And he's like, what are you doing? This is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. You always take the lead. You never let me be a man. And now I get it why everyone says that I live in your world. And I was like, oh, I want every woman to see this. This is what's up. Like, your guy may be super aggressive and he's always going to take the lead. But if he is not, this is the guy with he's the example of like, don't take the lead. Let them at least propose to you or ask you on a date. They will do it. And if they don't, that is on them. That has nothing to do with you. That is their insecurity or, their choice, really.
Yeah.
So, but I just thought that was hilarious. I'm like,
no, I mean, that's really interesting, actually. And I think it's very much just kind of like thinking about that narrative, which I think is constantly up in the air with conversations about, who should be making the first moves and everything like that. And I think, with different apps, like for Bumble, I think you guys get that over there, right? So obviously that's the girl making the first move and kind of, pushing more, the woman having the control. And I agree from a certain standpoint. And I'm very much, if I want something, I'm going to go and get it. So, when it comes to dating, I wouldn't have been afraid to ask a guy out or say, look, do you want to go for drinks? And if they said actually no, or they didn't reply, then I'd be like, cool, well, I know it's no skin off my nose. I'll get over it. Whereas, I think it can sometimes be quite damaging for somebody if you're kind of waiting for them to ask you, because you're then waiting for this person who probably has or potentially has no intention of following up with you or following through and taking you on a date. And you're thinking, great, okay, like when are they going to ask me? And you're kind of, preparing for this and it never comes. And then that's when you start questioning yourself and think, oh, did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? When actually, if you just took the bull by the horns and said, actually, do you fancy going for a drink? I'm free on this night. Does that work for you? And, some guys will like that and some guys won't. So it depends. And at the end of the day, like if, a guy likes that approach, then you're obviously quite well suited, because that's going to be the dynamic potentially going forward.
Right.
And if they don't, then, they probably weren't for you and it was never going to work out, anyway. So I think it just depends kind of what your vibe is in terms of whether or not you want to kind of wait and, in the wings for somebody to come and get you, or if you want to go and grab it and see what happens.
I so agree with this. And this is a huge thing that's happening right now, which is like, who does take the lead? Who, with the masculine, feminine roles. And, when I say that doesn't mean like, oh, you're feminine because you're a woman or you're masculine because you're a man. You can be a man who's feminine. You can be a woman who's masculine. We're all masculine in our job, in our work life. Like we're all going to go get what we want, hopefully, in our work life. So that's not what I'm talking about. But with romantic relationships specifically, it's my cat.
I was wondering what that was in the background.
They're little kitties still. What's interesting is that people are just confused. I know I'm confused. So I'll just use myself as an example. I'm extremely masculine in my life. Like I go get everything I want. I do not wait for something to come to me. I'm like, nope, gonna go get it. And it's great. But when it comes to relationships, I am not a go-getter with men. I have in the past. It's not that I can't do it. I can do it. But I always feel that I end up becoming the masculine role where I'm the one who's, like you just said, that creates the dynamic in the relationship. Yeah. So how do you still remain like feminist, but also traditional at the same time? Like wanting the guy to pay for the first date or second, or maybe all of them, who knows? It's up to you. Yeah. There's such an interesting dynamic going on. And I don't know if anyone has the right answer or knows the answer yet, but what are your views on this?
It's a really interesting subject, actually. And I just recently recorded an episode of my podcast with somebody talking about this subject and kind of, the dynamic and the narrative that is constantly evolving and changing amongst men and women in dating. And I think it just comes down to the fact that you will attract what you put out there. So if you're putting out there a really strong, independent woman who, in life goes and gets what she wants in her career and this and that, then you are therefore going to attract a man who appreciates a strong, independent woman and wants to build and evolve a life with that person within that narrative. Whereas, if you're never going to attract, so basically, think of it this way. If that's who you are as a person, are you going to want a guy who is literally just going to sit down and let you give it to him? Pardon the phrase. Right. Do you know what I mean? So you aren't going to want somebody like that. So you're going to attract somebody who is kind of like your sort of like the mirror image of you. So you can kind of work together and blend as one person. Right. Whereas I think if you're putting out there that you're maybe, like you said, a little bit not, I don't want to say frightened, but you're not as forthcoming when it comes to dating and being the kind of, I want to go and get this, I'm going to go and do this, then you're going to attract the guy who is going to take control, maybe a little bit too much, and think that you don't have a role in that relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I feel that's actually happened to me, where I've ended up with someone who was just too masculine. And then I was super triggered because I'm like, do you think that I'm just like some little wallflower here? Like, I'm not.
Just someone to be on their arm. Like, that's not what you want to be.
I think that's really good advice moving forward. So like, if you are more like introverted and like, lean back kind of, you probably would be best suited with someone who's like that. Then again, opposites attract, it just has to be in the right kind of situation. But you're right. Cause like when I think about like my future, like long-term relationship, I imagine someone who's like me and we do build together. So everything you just said,
and you want that give and take as well. You want, and like for me, like, I had a conversation recently about, paying on dates, because obviously, with women now, well, I say now, but, we're becoming more of a force where, equality is very much at the forefront, and we want, to be able to pay. We don't want to have to be looked after. We don't need to be looked after. Obviously, there are certain people who will want that life.
Married millions.
Yeah, exactly. And that's absolutely fine. If that's what they want to do and they're going to attract someone who wants to give them that life, then absolutely fair play. But I just think, I remember actually going on a date with the guy who the first part of the date was in a bar. We had a bunch of drinks and he paid for everything. And we decided to go and get a bite to eat afterwards. And we just went to like a cheap burger place. Like it wasn't, fine dining or anything. Right. And he went to the bathroom when we finished and I got the bill and paid. And it was probably an eighth of the cost of what he just paid for these drinks. And he came back and I remember he got really upset with me. And he was really put out by the fact that I'd paid for like a £20 burger when he just spent probably well over £100 on drinks. And I was just like, I just thought I'd grab this because obviously you'd paid before. And that's just me. That's how I feel. I would rather it be a really equal back and forth. You pay for one day, I'll pay for the other day. Or if it's an expensive day, I'll do the first bit, you do the second bit, or just however it levels out. But, some people aren't comfortable with that. And a guy, who is getting upset by me wanting to pay because I can pay and I wanted to pay is not the guy for me, because he obviously wanted me to be somebody who just sat there looking pretty, didn't say anything, and that was it. And that's just not me. So I think it's just for you to figure out the dynamic, but I think it's just important at the beginning to kind of put out what you want to get back.
And I think too, God, that's so brilliant, by the way. I hope you all just like really took that in because that was really, really smart. Sara is so smart. I love it. You're going to keep coming back like every month, like once a month.
Oh,
we're going to do a dating episode.
More than happy to.
But, I think there's a lot of programming, and I think I'm going to just, again, speak personally, like there is so much programming in me to be this very feminine role in a relationship. Again, just relationship. No one was ever like, honey, you should be this feminine role in your business life. No one said that to me. Everyone's like, no, you just go get them. Like you go be the millionaire. I'm like, I will. So, but like when it comes to relationships, like it is so difficult to sort of undo all of that programming of like,
and just the stereotypes that you've grown up with. Like, you see it in programs, in films, like even now, like in films, it's always the girl getting rescued by the guy. Like, and I just think we've just, like you said, we've just been programmed to think that, we're going to meet a man and he's going to look after us. We're going to have kids and we're going to live happily ever after. But that just isn't the norm. There's no reason why you need to wait in the wings for a man to come and rescue you. You go and find the man that you want. And, like you said, in every other part of your life, you do that. So why not relationships?
It's funny. There are two different books I'm thinking of right now. One is called Smart Women Finish Rich that I'm reading, and it's been around for like 20 years. It's brilliant. And there is a huge statistic of women who truly believe that he's just very affectionate. There's a huge percentage of women who believe that they will, and it doesn't matter how old you are, end up with a rich man, and that's how they'll retire. Like that's their game plan. They're like, oh, well, maybe I didn't invest well enough or take care of myself or do the 401k like I should have. I'll just marry rich. Like that's so easy. Like, that's crazy. And then the other book that I'm thinking of was an autobiography from a really famous songwriter I love. And she was like, make your money so that when you meet the right guy, it doesn't matter what he does. He doesn't have to make a certain amount of money because you could cover both of you if you wanted to. And it's funny, when I first read that, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But now when I look at it, I'm like, no, actually, that's kind of great. Like, not that you want to be taking care of someone, but it's just like the option is there to just make the life that you want instead of waiting for it to happen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I think it's just another one of those things where you think about what you want in life. And like you said, you kind of like when you grow up, you think, oh, I want to be, really wealthy in this big house with like these kids and all these pets and a pool in the back garden. Like that's kind of what you want. But I think actually what we should be teaching people or, kids is that you can still go and get what you want with someone that you want. And it doesn't have to revolve around money or success or anything like that. Because how many times have we seen stories of, people being, broken apart by financial issues or what have you, or the fact that, the age-old thing of, money doesn't buy happiness. And I think it's, what I think people should be doing, and women and men as well, when you're single is, focus on yourself. So be rich within yourself, not just money in the bank or whatever, but be happy with who you are. So then you don't need anybody. You don't need a man. You don't need a woman. You don't need anyone around you, but you want them in your life. And that's where you kind of want to be. You don't want to, look for a man because you're missing something in your life, whether it's, you're just lonely or you need, companionship or you want someone to make you laugh or whatever. You should be so like content and happy within yourself that you want to bring somebody else into that.
Right.
Rather than you actually going out there and thinking, right, you look okay. I kind of feel like you're going to fill this hole that I've got. Pardon the pun. And yeah,
that was great.
And yeah, so you don't need, like, that's basically what I'm saying is you don't need someone, but you just want someone to come into your life that you can build a life with, rather than it revolving around, needing them for something else.
And again, that's such a programmed thought that is super new to women, is that you get to choose. Like, I really didn't understand that concept until like years ago, like probably 4 or 5 years ago, where I was like, oh, wait, I'm sorry. I can choose that I want this person or not want that. Even if you love that person and you're like, no, that's not a good fit for me, I can choose not to be with them. Like, it seems so obvious, but there are so many women who are like, oh, I didn't realize I got a choice because I'm just happy to have someone fill the hole. But like now we really do have a choice. We've always had a choice, always. But like you really are like more
realizing it.
Yes, you're more cognizant of the fact that you do have a choice. Whereas men, primarily stereotypically, have always thought, well, of course I have a choice. I mean, that's obviously like that's how they live their lives. And that's the way they're brought up. It's just it's not reversal. It's just, I think this is what equality is. And this is how we're making.
And it's just a changing of the narrative. And, one thing I've kind of spoken about before, like in my podcast and on my Instagram, is that, so there's always been the kind of stereotypical man and the stereotypical typical woman that we've spoken about. But, why can't a woman go out and have sex like a man without the judgment? That's something I really, really want to get out there. And it's the same with anything else. Why can't a woman go out and be CEO? Why can't a woman go and do there's no reason why a woman can't go and do all these things, but it is just the narrative and just changing that narrative. So people just see that, it is equal. Women can go and do what men do. Men can go and do what women do. And it's even, looking at the fact that there's so many more men now staying at home and looking after the kids while the women go and work because they've built their careers and they don't want to give that up. Right. That's probably something we never really saw growing up because it was always, the dad goes out or the man goes out and, gets the money, comes home and looks after the family. But that isn't the story anymore. And I think it's we're not there yet, but we're definitely heading in the right direction. And it's a really interesting conversation to have because it's constantly unfolding.
Right. Well, let's have that conversation plus more next time we meet up, because that is huge. I love that so much. Sara, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell everyone how they can find you, including your podcast, all of the above.
Yes, so my podcast is The Good, the Bad and the Ghosted, which just basically covers the good, the bad and everything in between of dating. And my new series is coming out towards the end of this month, so look out for it. And you can check up on Instagram, and I'm on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much too. It's been the best.